The Peloponnesian War is one of the defining conflicts in one of the most defining eras of world history. The war itself, a titanic clash between Athens and Sparta, the superpowers of the Hellenic world, lasted from 431 to 404 BCE, and featured a chaotic whirlwind of shifting alliances and geopolitical maneuvering. To do justice to this war and to its battles, we're embarking on a new series of videos that will explore its events from beginning to end, analysing its causes, its politics, and many of its major battles. In this first installment, we will explore how the war began, the cultural and geopolitical context behind it, and most importantly, whether or not it was inevitable. Both sides were armed in a very similar and familiar way, and probably would have jumped at the chance to train magical beasts to join them in battle. Well, you've got something they didn't then, because you can do just this with our sponsor for this video, Call of Dragons. From the makers of the famous Rise of Kingdoms, Call of Dragons is an MMO fantasy conquest game where you collect fantasy warriors to aid in the rise of your alliance and the downfall of others with a mix of PvE and PvP content. You can take your allies out to hunt behemoths, powerful beasts that take a decent strategy to bring down. To find behemoths, explore the magical lands of the game and locate powerful candidates. Up to 8 distinctive behemoths, including ancient giant bears, thunder rocks, and the strongest of all, the mighty red dragon, are waiting to be tamed by the bravest. The best part is that after capturing them, you can educate them in various ways, which changes how they will be useful to you in the game. With the new Beastmaster role, you can control behemoths during PvP and GVG combats. It's the training that counts, and it's really satisfying to work out what your enemies will be weak against, and then train a behemoth to exploit that before unleashing it for a satisfying victory. The choice will be up to you and your allies, and the prize for getting this right will be world domination. You can give this a go for free right now by downloading Call of Dragons via our link in the description, or by using the QR code on the screen. And don't forget to use the promo code CODMONSTER for in-game items that will help you to start. The ancient Greek world, after the battles of Plataea and Mycale in 479 BCE, where the Persian Empire was soundly defeated, was a very different place than the one before the invasions. The various city-states of the Hellenic mainland had adopted many tactics to survive the Persian onslaught, from fighting to fleeing to medizing, which meant submitting. Sparta, a traditional hegemon, had stood defiant against Persia, a fact for which many city-states were thankful. Meanwhile, another up-and-coming city-state with a massive and imposing navy was gaining momentum. This city-state was Athens, which before the Persian invasion had been a marginal player in the Greek world with much political instability. Although Athens and Sparta had both played key roles in defeating Persia, they soon came to loggerheads over what to do after the King of Kings had been repulsed. Sparta, traditionally conservative in its foreign policy and content with its Peloponnesian sphere of influence, did not wish to fight further. Athens, emboldened by its new victories, wished to take the fight to the Hellespont and Asia Minor, claiming to be a liberator to the Hellenic city-states there still under Persian rule. As a result, in 478 BCE, the so-called Delian League of Cities was formed, with Athens at its head. This league was meant to continue fighting and liberating Greek cities, and their military expenditure would be covered through a common fund on its titular island of Delos. The expansion of this alliance, its gradual morphing into an Athenian empire, and the anxiety it caused among the elites of Sparta were important drivers of the war. In response to growing Athenian influence, the Peloponnesian League was founded in 550 BCE under the Spartan purview, and was essentially a means for Peloponnesian states to stay under Spartan influence. These alliances, much like NATO and the Warsaw Pact during the Cold War, created a delicate balance of power, but many members within each would rebel and try to switch sides during the war itself. In the Prelude to War, described by Thucydides as Archaeologia and Pentakontetia, a noteworthy event was the construction of the Long Walls in Athens in 479 BCE, which drew nervous eyes from Sparta, who looked upon the constructions of a more fortified, militant Athens with trepidation. Themistocles, of Battle of Salamis fame, was sent as an ambassador to Sparta to sort out their differences. Themistocles managed to delay Spartan diplomatic overtures long enough for Athens to begin construction of the walls, and Piraeus, Athens' harbour, was finally linked to the city proper via the long walls. Compounding onto this, another moment when Athens humiliated Sparta was the Helot revolt in Messenia. The Helots, the slaves of the Spartan state, were fed up with their particularly cruel treatment under the Spartan regime and revolted. Athens offered to help Sparta quell this revolt, but was rebuked by the proud warrior city-state. Eventually Athens was allowed to help with sieges, because Sparta was only good with hoplite warfare. In the following decades, Athens' political and military prestige continued to grow, as they fought campaigns in the Hellespont, Ionia, and Asia Minor. Major campaigns even took place in 460 BCE in Egypt, though they were largely failures with many losses for the Delians. One particular battle in Cyprus in 451 BCE saw an Athenian victory, but the death of the Athenian commander, Cimon. Soon, the vibrant Athenian democracy, with its constantly changing factions, had begun to assert itself as the uncontested top dog within its alliance. The treasury of the Delian League, previously located in the sanctuary in Delos, was moved to Athens in 454 or 453 BCE. These newfound funds, which were meant to support all the League's cities equally, were used for public works in Athens itself, much to the dismay of Athens' allies. In fact, in 451 or 450 BCE, Erythi, a city in Ionia, revolted against Athens, and many allies refused to pay tribute. Nevertheless, Athens' power was not dented. This was in part due to the fact that the funds seized from Delos also assisted with the development of the Athenian navy. Athens continued to export its naval power abroad, until the Peace of Antiochus, which exchanged Cyprus for an Asia Minor free from Persian control. At the same time, Athens continued to expand its influence through the establishment of colonies such as Thurii in Magna Graecia, a traditionally independent part of the Hellenic world under Syracusan hegemony. During Athens' wars of expansion, it was also changing at home, as an innovative young politician called Pericles had initiated multiple democratic reforms, initiating measures against the wealthy. By looking towards the sea, a policy continued by his predecessors, he continued the development of a strong navy for the promotion of Athenian trade interests. Many Peloponnesian states fought against Athens, one of which was Aegina in 460 BCE. But the rising naval superpower defeated Aegina, besieging and conquering the city. Fearing Athens would soon become their overlord rather than their ally, many other cities in the Delian League revolted, like Samos in 440 BCE. This revolt threatened to spread to Mytilene, another Ionian city, so Athens sent 70 triremes into the region, crushing the revolt. After this, Athens was the undisputed hegemonic master of the Delian League. Initially, Pericles was a conservative and restrained foreign policy actor, trying to avoid conflict with Sparta. Agis, one of the two Spartan kings, was also keen to avoid conflict, continuing in the long Spartan tradition of restraint and introversion. In fact, in 445 BCE, the two cities had signed the 30 Years' Peace, dividing ancient Greece into spheres of influence between them. This was important as the years between 460 to 445 BCE are considered to be a sort of Cold War between the two leagues, with Argos allying itself with Athens and Megara with Sparta. Eventually this Cold War would heat up, when the expansion of trade interests caused much friction and led to conflict between Athens and the most powerful secondary actor in the Peloponnesian League, Corinth. Corinth was a major naval power with many colonies, which led to many political crises with other cities. One such city was Epidamnus, which saw conflict between oligarchic and democratic factions. In 435 BCE, a democratic coup took place, expelling the oligarchs to the surrounding Illyrian tribes. The resulting conflict drew the attention of Corcyra, Epidamnus' mother colony, but they initially did not intervene. Instead, the Epidamnian Democrats sought assistance from Corcyra's own mother colony, Corinth. The Corcyraeans, who were not popular in Corinth herself, called upon the Athenians for assistance, who proceeded to engage in a proxy war in Sparta's sphere of influence. Corcyra and Corinth eventually fought each other in the Battle of Sybota, which flared up the situation considerably. As both Corcyra and Corinth claimed victory after their stalemate at Sybota, Athens further inflamed tensions by imposing economic sanctions on the city of Megara in 432 BCE. The so-called Megarian Decree was sponsored by Pericles himself and was meant to be a form of revenge for the alleged trespassing on Demetra's sacred meadows by the Megarians. The reality was less religious and more political. The Megarians had backed Corinth, which made them hostile to Athens. Sparta furiously demanded that Athens forsake the decree, and also insisted they let go of Aegina. However, the Athenians continued to be intransigent and continued to bully smaller cities in its alliance. One such city was Potidaea, a Corinthian colony which had many ties to its mother colony, including annual magistrate visits. Athens issued an ultimatum to Potidaea to cease all communications with Corinth and pull down its walls. Potidaea sent ambassadors to both Athens and Sparta, but negotiations broke down as Athens had already sent troops to enforce the ultimatum. The Potidaeans instantly revolted and made an alliance with the cities of the Chalcidici and the Bottiaeans, who joined in the rebellion. They were aided by the Macedonian king Perdiccas, who helped their forces move inland to Olynthus. Athens' 30 ships and 1,000 hoplites, under the command of General Archestratus, initially fought Perdiccas, as Archestratus anticipated that the Potidaeans would immediately comply with the wishes of Athens and increase their tribute. Meanwhile, Sparta and the Peloponnesian League had made some unofficial guarantees to Potidaea, and Corinth sent 1,600 hoplites and 400 light troops to Potidaea as well, under the command of Aristeas. These were informal volunteers, so as to not violate the 30 years peace. In response, Athens increased its commitment with another 2,000 hoplites and 40 more ships, under the command of Callias. After some fighting against Perdiccas, the combined Athenian forces sailed to Potidaea and landed there alongside 400 cavalry, while the Potidaean and Peloponnesian alliance numbered 1,600 hoplites, 200 light troops, and 400 cavalry. Archestratus seized the Macedonian city of Thermae and immediately began a siege of Pydna, with the Athenian reinforcements joining as soon as they arrived. Callias quickly arranged a ceasefire with Perdiccas, as Pericles had instructed him to focus on quashing possible upstart revolts, rather than focus on the Macedonian front. The Athenians were quite happy with this arrangement and concentrated all their forces against Potidaea. 3,000 Athenian hoplites, their allies, and 600 Macedonian cavalry left Pydna and marched to Potidaea, while their 70 ships sailed along the coast. Aristeas had been chosen to command the infantry, and Perdiccas, who had already broken his agreement and abandoned the alliance with Athens, was selected to command the cavalry. The anti-Athenian allies split their army in two. The Corinthians and Potidaeans positioned themselves on the isthmus just to the north, while the Chalcidians, Macedonians, and other allies took up arms near Olynthus. Their plan was to trap the Athenians by luring them into the valley towards the isthmus and then coming up from Olynthus to encircle them. The Athenians managed to outmaneuver them and sent the Athenian supporting Macedonian cavalry to Olynthus, blocking the reinforcements. The Athenians then attacked the main allied army. The Corinthian wing under Aristeas succeeded in routing the Athenians, but the Athenians had more success in routing all other parts of the enemy force. Aristeas was almost killed as he built up a column and entered the city of Potidaea. The Delian League had lost 300 men, while the Athenians were down only 150, Callias amongst them. The Athenians erected a trophy to commemorate the victory, and then built a wall to the north of the city alongside the isthmus. After this, the south was encircled with Athenian reinforcements of 1,600 hoplites under the command of Phormio, son of Asopius. This army landed at Pellene to the south of Potidaea and built fortifications to the south to completely blockade the city. Recognizing his situation was dire, Aristeas told the citizens to evacuate by sea, and left a garrison of 500 men to defend the city. The civilians ignored this call, so Aristeas escaped from the city and tried to call on Chalcidian and Peloponnesian assistance to little avail. The siege continued until the summer of 430 BCE, when further Athenian reinforcements were sent against Potidaea. This force was commanded by Hagnon of Nicias and Cleopompos of Clinias, and consisted of 4,000 hoplites, 300 cavalry, 100 triremes, and 50 ships from Lesbos and Chios. By 430 BC, a plague had begun to ravage Athens, and Hagnon's army spread it amongst the Athenian troops at Potidaea, where it killed 1,050 of his 4,000 men. Due to this, and also due to his siege engines not being able to breach the walls of Potidaea, Hagnon gave up and returned to Athens. However, despite Athens' inability to breach its walls, by the winter of 430 to 429, Potidaea had been almost starved to death, with even some cannibalism being reported. Athens, by this time, was already at war with Sparta, and the battle had both they and Potidaea lose 2,000 hoplites and depleted parts of their treasury. Hence they agreed to lenient terms of surrender. The Potidaeans, their wives and children and auxiliary troops would be allowed to walk away freely and go anywhere they wished. Each woman could take 2 garments with them, each man a single garment, as well as money for the journey. The Athenians kept control over Potidaea and resettled it with their own colonists. As Potidaea was being besieged, Sparta organized a meeting of the Apella, the Spartan citizen assembly, in which various foreign dignitaries could speak. Megara, still under an Athenian blockade, spoke first, and demanded Sparta begin wartime preparations. The Corinthians also spoke, maintaining how they had warned the Spartans, who did not trust Corinth, about the evil imperialism of the Athenians, bringing up Aegina as an example. Sparta, they claimed, was complicit in Athenian imperialism by being passive. Then came the Athenian delegation, which immediately declared that they did not consider the Spartans their judges, but their equals. They then proceeded to claim that they had a right to their hegemony as the champions of Hellas against the Persians, and in that essence, they had won their position by their own deeds. In addition, they said should the Spartans go to war and defeat them, they would only take their place as hegemons of all of Hellas. These speeches are approximations of Thucydides' interpretations of what could have been said, and thus are fabricated. They do, however, provide clues as to the geopolitical aims of the various actors, as well as the general ideologies of the combatants. The Athenians also claimed that they had been, in fact, quite moderate in their aims, essentially warning the Spartans that they could muster even more troops than they had sent to Potidaea. After Athens had had its say, Archidamos, king of Sparta, rose to the proverbial podium. He addressed the dignitaries by mentioning that the Spartans could raid the valleys of Attica. However, he himself was not of the party that desired war, and warned the Spartans that if they started war now, that war could very well pass down to their children. After all these speeches, the Apella voted by shouting, a common means of voting in ancient Greece. The result was a profound yes to war. Sparta still tried to send 3 embassies to Athens in order to avoid further escalation. However, it was too late. Ultimately, it will never be certain whether the outbreak of war between Athens and Sparta was indeed inevitable. However, the actions of the major players of the era certainly contributed to the eventual outbreak of hostilities, such as Pericles' adventurous foreign policies for Athenian expansionism and Corinth's pursuit of Athenian containment. Sparta was restrained, but also had a war party that considered the Athenians a threat to them. While Thucydides claimed that the fear of Athenian supremacy moved Sparta to war, modern historians debate how true this was, and no true conclusion will ever be fully reached. What we do know is that after a long period of proxy wars and hegemonic consolidation, the Delian and Peloponnesian Leagues were now on a collision course. The Peloponnesian Wars would last decades, and see stories of untold bravery and unimaginable brutality. They would see large geopolitical ploys across the Mediterranean, and ideological conflicts within the city-states which fought in the war. and they would see the return of suffering amongst the people of Hellas, suffering not seen since the Persian Wars. Thus the Peloponnesian Wars began. This series will continue in the near future, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Recently, we have started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive videos. Join the ranks of patrons and YouTube members via the link in the description or by pressing the button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, join our private Discord, and much more. Please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. It helps immensely. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.